morning. If you want to open up to Psalm 131, it's going to be, at least for now, the last message in our series on the life of David. We kind of introduced this psalm last week, and we just sang the Scottish Psalter version. I was really thankful Andy learned to play that so we could sing that. There's a lot of the psalms that are really nice that they set to tunes, that common tunes that are to a lot of other hymns. Before we read Psalm 131, why don't we pray here together? Father, we look to you. We need you every day. We need you for everything. The flesh profits nothing. It's the Spirit that gives life. So we're looking to you for help just in our time here this morning, but also in our life. We need you. And so we're looking to you for help. Thank you for this psalm. I pray it be helpful and clear and pleasing to you. Amen. Why don't we start by reading Psalm 131, a song of ascents of David. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. Well, we're ending up, at least for now, the life of David here, and we have this psalm, and it makes me think, of course, of how David's described, a man after God's own heart, and we talked quite a bit about that, but one of the things that definitely is part of that is his humility, and we see that in this psalm here, as well as the ending of 1 Samuel, where he's contrasted with Saul in the last several chapters. But before we jump right in, I want to just point out a few things here. That superscription, a song of ascents of David, all of those are in the oldest copies we have of the Psalms, just so you know. So this is something that really in one way could be verse 1 in all the Psalms that have them. So it's good to look at those and know like this is a part of the scripture. If you have depending on what Bible you have, you might have something above it, like a title of the psalm, or sometimes the editors of whatever Bible you have will have little summaries of what's going on in the chapter in the psalm, and those aren't original. But these little superscriptions, a song of ascents of David, that is original into the oldest copies of the psalm. So it's good to look at those. So before we start, let's just talk about that, a song of ascents of David. Well, Psalms 120 to 134 are all songs of ascent, if you'll notice. That superscription is in all of them. Not all of them are of David, but this particular one is. We don't know when David wrote this in his life. It doesn't tell us that. We could guess. But it applies to a lot of different pieces of his life, about an attitude that can go with any part of life. So that is one way is kind of an amazing thing that it doesn't tell us the specific time in his life, because it really applies to any time in our life. But what is a song of ascent? Well, it seems that the Jews would sing this group of psalms called the Song of Ascents as they ascended to Jerusalem. Multiple times a year they would go for the festivals. And on their way to Jerusalem, they would sing these psalms of ascent. And this worship was a part of their life. Regular rhythm in their life, they would go over these. Actually, this would be a great series of messages here on the Psalms of Ascent. Maybe we should do that someday. Because it's a group of things that they need to remember year after year. Multiple times a year, they would go over these topics and sing these. Things really haven't changed. Things we need to remember. How to lament. What is humility? How to have faith. Forgiveness, that we need forgiveness. Looking forward to the Messiah. Just worship and thankfulness to God. All these things that they would regularly rehearse year after year repeatedly. A kind of a few basics of our life that we need to remember. So it still applies to us today. We still need humility today. We still need to lament. We still need faith and forgiveness and looking forward to the Messiah. Of course, we know that he's coming the second time. They were looking forward to his first coming. And we still need worship. And so I think one day this would be a good series to go through all the Psalms of Ascent and think about how year after year they would rehearse these things, and they would probably change over time as you get older. Things, as you're a child, you might think of Psalm 131 from the child's perspective, but as you become a parent, you think of it differently as you're thinking from the parent's perspective. So maybe that one day that would be a good thing. But for now, I think that's enough to say that they were preparing to go and worship, and they would sing these. But today we're just going to focus on one, Psalm 131. And we're going to talk about the topic of humility. Humility. And I think it'd be good just to start, before you even read verse 1 of Psalm 131, just to talk about humility in general. Because there's some strange views on humility, even in the Christian world. So I want to give a few examples here just to introduce the topic. Imagine you're a very beautiful woman or a sharp man. One of our kids don't like to be, we don't call men beautiful, we call them sharp. You look sharp. So that's why I said that. So imagine that. Imagine that you are a beautiful woman or a handsome man. Or maybe you're a person that's smart. You're a smart person. You get straight A's. And it's easy. Well, every person has some kind of gift, something that God has gifted them in. Maybe you're a hard worker, or maybe you have artistic talent, or maybe you're a good writer, or maybe you're good with your hands building things. Whatever it is, there's some strange views on humility, false ideas of humility. There's one quote, I couldn't find it, but I'm going to paraphrase it. I think it's quite old. It was like from the 1600s, but it basically said this: humility is walking into your room and comparing yourself to all other people and thinking, I'm the worst. Which I think that is a bad view of humility. That's not a good view of humility. I don't think you should actually be comparing yourself to walking into the room and start comparing yourself to people at all. So there's these weird ideas of humility. Humility ideas like, if you are a beautiful woman or you're a smart person, you can't recognize that. You have to think, no, I'm not beautiful, or no, I'm not smart. And that's not what humility is either. I'll give you a couple verses here to show this. Here's what Paul says: by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace toward me was not in vain. On the contrary, I worked harder than any of them, though it was not I, but the grace of God that is within me. Well, here is a verse where Paul recognizes that he worked harder than anyone else. Think about that. Imagine a situation like that where somebody says, well, I worked hard. You guys all know I worked harder than all of you. Is that humble? It can be. Look what he says next. Though it was not I, but the grace of God that is within me. What if somebody said, you know how humble I am? Is that humble? Paul said it in Acts 20. When he came to them, he said, you yourselves know how I lived among you the whole time, from the first day I set foot in Asia, serving the Lord with all humility, with tears and trials that happened to me through the plots of the Jews. So these things are kind of strange. They sound strange to us. Why is Paul saying I worked harder than all of you? Why is he saying, you know how humble I am? Well, I think there's something that should help us with this idea, and that there's several false ideas of humility. And I think these categories will help. This is all introduction, but I think it's really important. There's two categories of humility: Godward humility and manward humility. We need both. The Bible talks about both, but it's helpful to have these ideas in your mind. Godward humility and manward humility. Or we could say vertical and horizontal. Vertical humility, horizontal humility. Here's an example. 1 Peter 5, 5 through 7 gives us both. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Clothe yourself with all humility toward one another. Okay? Humility toward one another. That's manward humility. For God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. That's Godward humility. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God. We should have both. We should have manward humility and we should have Godward humility. And these two types of humility are related. And we'll get into that. But first, let's go ahead and now jump in. All that's introduction. We'll kind of review that as we go through Psalm 131. Let's read the first verse, just the first part of the first verse. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. The first thing I want us to notice here about humility is that it's in the heart. Humility is inward. It's in the heart. And this is what David is saying, that his heart is not lifted up. An example of this from the Bible is Absalom. Absalom had this outward humility, but in his heart, he wasn't humble. And I'll read a little section here that gives a good feel for that. So Absalom, this is later on in David's life, but Absalom is David's son. It says this in 2 Samuel 15, after Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him, and Absalom used to rise early and stand beside the way of the gate. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for judgment, Absalom would call to him and say, from what city are you? And when he said, your servant is from such and such a tribe in Israel, Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right, but there's no man designated by the king to hear you. Then Absalom would say, oh, that I were judge in the land. Then every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice. And whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. And thus Absalom did to all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. And at the end of the years, 4 years, Absalom said to the king, please let me go and pay my vow which I have vowed to the Lord in Hebron. And he actually ends up saying he's going to sacrifice to the Lord, but actually what he wants to do is kill his brother. Well, God sees our outward humility, but God knows our heart. We need actual humility in our heart. Absalom had this outward humility. He acted really humble, and he acted like he was everyone's servant, but all the time he was actually wanting both to kill his brother and to take over the kingship from his father. So we're not talking about how we act outwardly. Someone could be outwardly appear humble, but what God looks on is our heart. So we want actual humility in our hearts. Our outward humility, if it's not met with inward reality, will not fool God. God sees not as man sees. God looks on the heart. So we could ask ourselves this. Could I pray this? Oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up. That's quite a thing to pray, because God Almighty actually looks down and he will see our heart. And so we could ask the Lord, God, make this real to where I could pray this. God, please make my heart not be lifted up. Okay, let's read the second half of verse 1. My eyes are not raised too high. My eyes are not raised too high. Well, Matthew Henry says he thinks this part is specifically talking about manward humility. He says this. This is from Matthew Henry. Either eyes being lifted high are either to look with envy upon those above us, or to look with disdain on those that are below us. So in Hebrew, an idiom for haughtiness or the lack of humility is lifted up eyes. In English, we might say something like looking down your nose at someone. It's not literal. It's not saying their eyes are actually looking too high. It's talking about their eyes are raised too high in the sense of they're proud. And so this comes up several different places. But in terms of manward humility, we don't want to, as Matthew Henry said, either look with envy upon those above me or look with disdain upon those below me. Well, this kind of comes back to that idea, false idea of comparing yourself. One, we should know this. We don't have the discernment to compare ourselves with others. We just don't have the discernment to compare ourselves with others. We shouldn't really be putting people above or below us in terms of value. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians 4. With me, it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or any human court. In fact, I do not even judge myself, for I am not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore, do not pronounce judgment before the time, before the Lord comes, who will bring to light things that are hidden in darkness and will disclose the purposes of the heart. Then each one will receive his commendation before God. Well, we just don't have discernment to compare ourselves with others. We don't have enough discernment, even Paul says, to judge ourselves. We might think, wow, I'm really innocent here. But actually, we aren't. We don't know. God knows our heart. Paul says, I'm not aware of anything against myself, but I'm not thereby acquitted. It's the Lord who judges. There might be things that we don't realize. We have a blind spot. So how much more to look at others and feel like we can put them in categories above or below us? It's just a false idea. So when we meet other people, we should not really compare ourselves to them in terms of value. It's God's job. It's not our job. So that's another thing that we can notice from this in terms of what Matthew Henry is saying, that this is manward humility. Not only do we not have the discernment to compare ourselves with others, it's not our job. It's not our job. Your job is not to judge other people and decide if they're above or below you. That's God's job. God's the one who decides what, if somebody's doing is right or wrong. And it's not our job. We can be good fellow Christians and try and help one another, but ultimately we leave ultimate judgment to God. And it's not to say that we don't try and help one another call out sin, but it's the idea of having your eyes raised too high, of saying, well, I'm definitely above this person. Or maybe the opposite, like Matthew Henry said, looking with envy on those who you feel like are above you. And both are a lack of humility. Let's think about it this way. Imagine at your job, most of us have a boss, if you're working at a place, unless you're the boss. So if you work at a place and you're the actual boss, then maybe imagine you're not the boss. But imagine it comes towards the end of the year and you decide, you know what, I'm going to type some thoughts out and give it to my boss. And you type out the performance of all the other people that work with you and all the things that you feel like they could be doing better. And you hand it in to your boss. Here you go. Here's the performance report for everyone else, all the other teachers. Here's all the other fifth grade teachers, and here's how they're doing. Or here's all the other, whatever, wherever you work. Imagine you turn that into your boss. That's presumptuous. That's really proud. That's not your job if you're not the boss. But sometimes we do that to God. Sometimes we think, I'm going to look around and I'm going to, do that in my heart. This is not your job. This is God's job. And we see how these two categories of humility go together. Godward humility and manward humility. One feeds into the other. If we humble ourselves before God, that leads into this manward humility. If we realize this isn't my job, even to judge myself, even I almost certainly have things that I think I'm doing right and I'm not, and I'm not seeing them clearly. So if I can't even judge myself, how is it my job to decide who's above and below me? That's certainly not my job. And that Godward humility to say, like, God, this is up to you. It's not up to me. This isn't my job. That feeds into manward humility. Well, let's keep going because we're going to talk a little bit more related to that, let's read the last part of verse 1. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. It's kind of an interesting word picture here in Hebrew that I'll just tell you about. This verse starts with, I do not walk. I do not walk. Does the NAS say don't walk? Does anyone have anything that says I don't walk? Or does it say occupy? Well, the Hebrew is I don't walk. It just says I don't walk. And then in things too great for me, too great and too marvelous for me. Well, it's playing into that picture of a child, right? This whole psalm is talking about a child with its mother. So you can imagine the child is upon the mother. And the child's not walking. The child's not their eyes aren't lifted up. They're not occupied with anything. They're being carried. And so this word picture here comes out in this last part of Psalm 131. I don't walk. Well, the child is being carried. And that will come up again in verse 2 when it says, like a weaned child with its mother, it's also like a weaned child upon its mother. So the child is being carried. The child is laying its head. I'm imagining the child laying their head on the, right here on the crook of the shoulder of the mother and being carried. So the child's not walking in things too great and too marvelous. Well, this also applies to us as adults with God. There are things beyond us. That's what we were just talking about. There are things that are beyond us. We can't read people's hearts. We can't look and know what's going on in people's hearts. We can't put people into categories and decide who's above and who's below other people. There are things that are beyond us. There are things that are beyond me. It should not surprise us that we are limited. We are limited. There are things too great for you. Just like Peter tells us not to be surprised when suffering comes upon us, it seems like our human nature, our sinful nature, is surprised when we're limited. We're surprised when we make plans and something happens and things go wrong. We're surprised when we do our best but we make a mistake. Something happens that we didn't anticipate, or we misunderstood something. What we want to happen is thwarted. We're limited. There are things too great for you and me. And to not occupy ourselves with things too great and too marvelous for us, we have to recognize that. If we think everything's my job, it's my job to fix everything, there's nothing too great, too marvelous for me, then we're going to err. Because it's not true. We are limited. God has limited our responsibility. God has limited our control. God has limited our knowledge. There are things out of your and my control, and we have to be able to recognize that. It leads us to maybe some questions we could ask. If something is beyond me, if something's beyond me, whose responsibility is it? Ultimately, it's God's. If something is beyond my control, who is in control? God. If something is beyond my knowledge, who does know? God. There's a lot of things that are out of our control. And I think our sinful nature wants us to be in more control than we are. We want to be less limited than we are. There's, hundreds of things you could think of here. It would be really nice to tell your body, get well, don't get sick. Right? It would be really nice if you could just tell other people what you want them to do and be like, and they just do it. But that's not going to happen. That's not how life works. That's beyond us. It'd be really nice to be in control of world events. A lot of wars that we could just stop. I'd really like gas prices to go down, But you know what? There are things that are too great and too marvelous for me. And it would be foolish for me to dwell on that and wish that I was in control, because someone better is in control. God. We could summarize it this way. We could say this. Here's a phrase that we should say more often, probably. I don't know. I don't know. Not only that, I don't know, but I can trust God. I can trust God with it. I don't know, but I can trust God with that. There are things that are beyond your responsibility. This probably happens to you where you meet someone and it seems like, man, this person could really use a friend, or they seem lonely, or you can't help every single one of those people. You just don't have the time. You don't. And there's going to be people where you just have to say, I trust them to God. I'd love to be able to help them, but that's beyond me. There's things that are beyond your control. There's lots of things that God has given to other people, and ultimately He's in charge of, and we just have to say, God, you're in control of that. I trust you with that. There's lots of things you can't know, that you'll never know, and you just have to give those to God. None of us are in control of world events. We don't have control. We do what we can, and then we trust God. Especially there's times as parents where you want, sometimes I've said this, if I could shake this into you, I would, but I can't. I can't. You just can't make someone understand. You can't make someone do what you want them to do. Even situations where you have the most control, like as a parent, you can control a lot about your child's life, but you can't control them. Ultimately, you do your best to lead them and guide them, and then you leave it to God. Okay, let's read verse 2 here. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child upon its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. This is intentional action. I have calmed and quieted my soul. This attitude takes intentional action. This is something we have to decide, we have to practice. There are going to be things that are beyond your knowledge, your responsibility, your capability, your control. And what do you do then? You need to calm and quiet your soul, like a weaned child with its mother. You have to go back to asking yourself those questions. Is it my responsibility to whatever it is? And if it's not, whose is it? God's? Can I trust Him with that? Yes. And then rest. Actually trust Him. When we make mistakes, we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that we try to do and we do it poorly. Where we try and fix something and it gets worse. Where we try and make a plan and it falls apart. Then what do? We remember, wow, this is a reminder that I'm limited, that I'm not God. There's things out of my foresight. There's things I can't see. There's things I don't know. There's things that I can't do. I don't have perfect knowledge. So what do? I can use this as a reminder. God, you're God and I'm not. And I can trust you. And I can calm and quiet my soul and be okay with that. There are things beyond me. And that's okay. I would love to be able to sing like some of you sing. Can't. I think I could spend my whole life trying to sing like that and still wouldn't be able to do it. I could get upset. I could get envious. I could get mad. Or I can calm and quiet my soul and say, God, you know. That's okay. It may be something different for you. For you, it might be all A's. You could spend 24 hours a day studying, and still, the kid in the seat next to you would still get a higher grade than you. And that's okay. What do? You can get mad. You can get mad at God. You can get mad at that person. Or you can calm and quiet your soul and say, God, I did my best. I give it all to you, and I can trust you. I want to highlight something for you. Who is the one that made you who you are? It's God. There's a verse here I want to read. It's from 1 Corinthians. This is what Paul says. I have applied all these things to myself and to Apollos for your benefit, brothers, that you may learn by us not to go beyond what is written, that none of you may be puffed up in favor of one against another. For who sees anything different in you? What do you have that you did not receive? If then you received it, why do you boast as if you did not receive it? Paul is relating these two things of manward humility and Godward humility. One leads into the other. Who sees anything different in you? What do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as if you did not? And he says all this is so we will not be puffed up one against another. So let's apply this to our lives. How does this actually apply? Let's think about it this way. Let's paraphrase Paul here. Are you 7'1" and can dunk a basketball without jumping? Did you knock on the womb and say, hey, I'd like to be 7'1"? No. Who made you that way? God. And if it's something you received, why would you boast as if you didn't receive it? As if you were the one that made it. Okay? And you could apply that to a million different things. Is studying easy for you? Is getting straight A's easy for you? Did you receive that? Was God the one that made you that way? Even if you worked hard, there's some natural gifting God has given you, then why boast as if you did not receive it? Could be 1,000 other things. Whatever way God has gifted you, it's a gift. He's gifted you. He gave it to you. There's no reason to boast because it's a gift. Even things where we work hard and that helps us in different areas, ultimately, that's still a gift. Of course, it makes me think of some of my students, that I used to work with. I had some very hardworking students. Some of the students were maybe the most diligent people I've ever met. And for them, that meant by 5th grade, they could read, see, spot, run. And I think, like the verse Paul says, they worked harder than I think any of the other kids. And that's where they got. And so if you can read it all, that's a gift from God. Even if you put in hard work as well, wherever you started, that was a gift. It's not a reason to boast or to be puffed up one versus another. What do you have that you have not received? Everything. Everything's a gift. If you have hands to work and legs to walk and a mind to think, that's all a gift from God. Well, let's keep going. We could talk more about that, but let's keep reading here. Like a weaned child is my soul within me, like a weaned child with its mother. This is intentional action. We have to calm and quiet our soul. But what's the goal here? The weaned child is not calm because of what the mother gives them. That's the idea of a weaned. They're not crying and receiving something for comfort. They're weaned. They're just there with the mother. Just the mother themselves is the comfort, not the changing circumstances or giving of something. It's just the presence of the mother. And that's what we should be like towards God. We should be able to calm and quiet our soul even if God doesn't change our circumstances or change that other person or change our limitations. Just God. Him. We can trust him. We can find comfort in who he is, period. Even when nothing changes. Even when the problem's not solved. Even when whatever difficulty it is not taken away. Just God, who he is. Part of this intentional action, calming and quieting your soul, is just going to God. Go to his presence. Pray. Enter in to the reality that there's a God that's in control of everything and we can trust him with everything. Remember, he's God and we are limited children. We're limited. He's in control. We have some responsibilities, but they're small. Our influence is small. Even in our life, even in the small ways we have, God has given us responsibility. It's even less often than we would like. We want to be in charge of more. God is God. There's a lot outside of our control and outside of our limitations. So we go to his presence. I've got a quote here that I'm going to read. I think reading something that's kind of the opposite can help us see what the Bible is saying here. This is from a book about humility, but I want you to listen to the logic of this and compare it with the logic of Psalm 131. So it's about the verse, God gives grace to the humble. What are you building with your life? A marriage, a family, a business, a church, a career? In all your ventures, are you aware of your need for God's grace to give your efforts lasting value? Do you long for God's providential help and blessing? Then let's allow the promise of humility to shape our life and choices. Okay, think about the logic of that paragraph versus Psalm 131. I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. It's not saying, do you want to build something? What is the good thing you're trying to accomplish? Then be humble so you can accomplish that thing. This is saying the opposite. This is saying we should have humility in the presence of God, period. When we're not receiving anything, when we're not building anything, when we're not accomplishing anything, we're just with God. God has given us things to do, but we don't add humility as the key ingredient to get things done. It's just the reality of the way the world is. God is God, and we can trust him, period. Even when we don't get anything from him. Even when we're not having our circumstances changed. Do we need humility in all those things? Absolutely. Absolutely we do. But the goal is not to get God to do something. See the difference? Well, let's keep going here. Let's read this last verse. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. Our hope should be in God, in God. We could say, again, this is a pretty great comparison between Saul and David. Outward hope versus inward hope. Do you have an outward hope or an inward hope? Is your hope inward in something you are, in something you're doing, in something you have, or your worth is found somewhere in you? Or is your hope in the Lord, who He is, what He does? Do we find our worth, our rest in the Lord or in something in us? We want to hope in the Lord. Hope in the Lord and who He is, not in something we are. Hope in what the Lord does. He is faithful and just. He always does the right thing, not something that we do. Our worth and our rest are found in the Lord. He's our hope. My worth is not found in something I do. My rest is not found in something I do. It's found in Him. I really like this quote from one of the Puritans. I can't remember which one it was, but they said at the end of the day, they would in their mind wrap up all their good deeds and all their bad deeds and lay them both at the foot of the cross. I really like that. Our hope is not in even our best deeds. We lay those at the foot of the cross. Because what do we have that we haven't received? Our hope isn't shattered when we mess up. When we have a bad day, when we don't accomplish something, when we don't succeed, when we do the wrong thing, when we fail. Why? Because we wrap all those up, all the failures up, and we put those at the foot of the cross. I really like that. That really goes well with what Matthew Henry said about our eyes not looking up or down. Because either way, we're just looking at the cross. We're looking at Jesus. We're not looking at those around us and trying to compare ourselves. We're saying, even our best deeds, on our best day, our hope's still in the Lord. It's not in what we've done. And on our worst day, our hope is still in the Lord. It's not in how bad we've been. It's not shattered because my hope was never in me and my success. And I'm not puffed up because my hope was never in me and how good I've been. It's always been in Jesus. And so either way, we look to Him. Our hope is in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. On your best day and on your worst day and all the days in between, our hope's in Him. Well, I'd like to conclude with just a word to any non-Christians. What if you're here and you're not really trusting the Lord? You haven't fully trusted in Him. You haven't been baptized. You aren't wanting to say, like, I'm following Jesus. I'm trusting Him to wash away my sins. This psalm, I think, can be a help to you. Come like a child to God. Stop believing that you can find calm and quiet for your soul outside God. Whatever you're hoping in outside God is not going to calm and quiet your soul. Stop hoping in experiences or circumstances or self-achievement and hope in God. Come like a child. Realize your sin is too great for you. You need God. The direction of your life, where you want to go, what you want to do, all those, each and every decision, that's too great for you. That's too difficult for you. You need God to direct you, your life. Your hope has to be in the Lord. Period. You can't wash away your own sin. That's something too great and too marvelous for you. But God is offering to wash away your sin by trusting Him. And He can do it today. Hope in the Lord. Now and forevermore. Today and every day. Just like I quoted that Puritan, wrapping up all your best deeds and all your worst deeds and putting them both at the foot of the cross. That's how we become Christians. We realize, wow, I need to put everything I've done at the foot of the cross, and all of it needs to be washed by the blood of Jesus. I can't do it myself. But then that's also how we live our Christian life every day. We trust in him to wash away our sin, to guide us, to direct us. Faith is how we're saved, and faith is the way we walk, how we live. By having faith in the Lord, hoping in him, not in what we can do. Well, I hope this is a help to you. Something that we can continue to think about, and I hope it makes you think a little bit, rethink about, one, the life of David. We can be thankful for this psalm and the way David really lived this out. And, we might think of some of his best, the highlights of David's life when he fought Goliath. Where was his hope? Was it in himself? No, it was in God. It's the Lord, the same Lord that delivered him from the hand of the lion and the bear is the one that will deliver him from Goliath. And in his worst moments, he forgot and he started to hope in himself, what he wanted, and about how can I change this situation. So we can learn and emulate the good and try and avoid his mistakes. And we can ask God, would you help me to have this kind of a heart of humility that looks to God and hopes in him from this time forth and forevermore. I think if we're honest, we would confess there's times when we do find our worth in what we do or accomplish rather than God. And so we can look to him and ask him to help us and to change us. Before we close, any questions, comments, clarifications?